Okay, welcome back to the Outlet Podcast. I'm Gabe, and I'm joined today by Matt.
Hello.
Matthew, do you go by Matt or Matthew?
Matt's fine.
Matt. All right, for sure. All right, so Matthew, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
Good. It's been a weird, past few weeks. First off, because we haven't seen the sun in Southern California and San Diego in like a week, and also this coronavirus thing is getting really serious. Like I feel like me, I feel like I've been a little bit depressed. Not like depression, but just, under the weather rather for the past few days. But I don't know. Have you felt kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I personally enjoy the rainy, gloomy kind of weather, but I definitely think that some sunshine is necessary for your well-being.
Definitely. Yeah, I saw a study not too long ago where it basically showed that people who are in the sun actually releases serotonin in their body more. So people take artificial vitamin D for just feeling happy.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So you want to join the military,
Yep.
right? You want to go to the Marines.
Yep.
So what is it about the military that actually interests you? Because for me, I don't really see any interest in the military. I mean, I understand there's a ton of money going in, but I don't know. I've just kind of seen it as like not a route for me. And I'm sure it's not a route for most people, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, some of it comes from like the fundamentals about like what I believe, and I think that this country's given me and my family so much, and that like someone has to protect it, and I feel like I feel a sense of duty that I need to kind of pay it forward and serve my country before I can reap the benefits that I've been given by it. Because I mean, I'm going to a good college. I'm gonna get like probably 2 really good degrees, and I think I'm gonna be able to have a lot of success in life. And I think that it's only fair and just that I pay it forward first. And obviously, there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think the military, more specifically, kind of fits my personality. I don't know. I mean, I've always been kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm definitely into like blowing stuff up and shooting big guns, and
That's what I'm talking about, man.
Yeah,
There's something about
do
shooting
it.
a big gun, It's just
Yeah,
like
I mean-
you get a sense of power when you shoot it,
yeah, and I think I definitely need to do some growing up before I can handle just having a desk job. Like,
Yeah, seriously, man.
so
Seriously.
just going out into the field, and
Yeah.
yeah, and that sense of teamwork and camaraderie is just something that you won't really find anywhere else.
That's right. Well, you play a bunch of sports too. Like it's very similar. Well, I don't know. I don't have any first-hand experience, but I mean, I think it'd be very similar to like playing on a football team or something.
Yeah, I mean, being on a football team is like the closest camaraderie you'll get, and I think that the only thing that beats that is the military.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's what's really attracted me to it as well,
for sure.
the brotherhood.
Yeah, so, the military, at least the United States military, has done some pretty questionable things in the past,
Oh, for sure.
100 years, right? And so, like, how do you kind of relate those two things about wanting to join the military, and also, it has this weird kind of history with the Middle East and, the South America and the Central America. I don't know. It seems like to me that there's a lot of bad things that the military has done, and it's kind of, dissented away from the general population. What do you think about that? I don't know.
I mean,
maybe you don't agree. I mean, they've done some bad things.
No,
right?
I 100% agree, and I don't want to put that on the military. I want to put that on the people that are running it. Like,
Yeah.
there's the politicians. There's no doubt that our politicians are extremely corrupt, and I think that there's a lot of corruption with being paid off by these companies, like oil companies, that want to profit off of what's going on, and that's what's tough. And I think when you make any decision about joining an organization, or you really have to like weigh in the good and the bad. And I think that historically the American military has been incredible, like key to maintaining global stability. And I think that it can get back to that. And I think that if I decide to not join because of like where it's going now, I think that it's never going to get back if all the good people do that. I think that the only way to get it back is for more good people to join.
Yeah, definitely. That certainly seems like a logical solution. Just get better people in the military. Yeah, man, you mentioned that you think there's a lot of political corruption, and I 100% agree. Like, I feel like most of the reasons why we get in wars nowadays are for money. because we put so much money into the military. We're seeing it as somewhat of like an investment.
Yeah.
Right. So, in America, we've had this narrative that America is like the police for the world.
Yeah.
That, we're the good guys and we're trying to make sure that the world is in proper order and all this shit. What do you think? Like, do you think America has a real global position in monitoring the world's affairs? Or do you really think that, we should have more of a hands-off approach with military? Like, I don't know. Because you get, you see that in the Middle East, we've been there for so fucking long. And what we're really wanting there is just oil.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of scenarios where we are definitely needed. And I think that in combating terrorism and in combating a lot of the world's crises and issues, we are very necessary. And I think that definitely one man shouldn't decide. I think that the fact that the president can deploy like 2,500 troops or whatever I don't know exactly how many, but I think it's about 2,500 troops without approval from Congress. I think that that's probably questionable because I don't think that the president should be able to decide who gets aid or not. But I do believe in the Congress actually deciding who we go to war with because odds are not all the politicians are corrupted by the same companies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, ExxonMobil definitely has their hand in politics.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. The military, to me, it seems like a really good route. Like, it's just not built for me, It's,
Yeah.
I don't have the temperament to be in the military, But for some people, like, I'll tell you a story. So I had a friend of mine. His name is Charlie. He was 23 when I was 17, and he basically told me, he didn't have his life in order. He was smoking weed all the time. He was working at Five Guys, and he told me he just showed up to a recruitment office and just signed up.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people who just have bad situations that go to the military, and from what I've heard, it really straightens people out.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel that that's kind of another reason why you're drawn to the military is like you just don't have like the I don't want to say you're a bad person.
Yeah, like I don't have
the order.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not as much like that for me. I mean, definitely a big part of it is that there are ways that the military can set you up. I saw this graph once that shows people who commission as officers in the military after college compared to people who get out of college. The average wage outside of college is over 30 grand less than the starting wage of the military. And the thing about the military is that they also give you housing stipends on top of your salary, and they also pay for your food. And so you really have the ability to save probably 50 or 40 to 50 grand a year on a military officer salary if you're living like if you don't have kids and you're not married and
Yeah.
you're like living like simply.
Definitely.
So the way I see it is, aside from me feeling a sense of duty to join the military, I think that there is a huge opportunity for me to save a ton of money and then invest in properties and real estate and then start my life off with kind of like this crutch of having a bunch of capital that I can take more risky decisions, which could in turn end up with me being more successful in the business world.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good route. Yeah, if you go to a job office and you have on your resume that you went into the military and became an officer,
Yeah.
like that's just an ultimate green light
Yeah.
to put you in pretty much. Well, I mean, I'm not saying any job, but like just your standard job. Like
Yeah,
it's a really good thing to have on a resume.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I have some friends who live on base, and it's weird. It's like this own little community that exists within the United States. It's like these are the military people. You got to go through a gate, and you got to show your ID, and you got to get called in. It's weird. It's like its own socialist home. 'Cause they pay for your whatever, right? So I don't know. Moving on, I feel like in the United States, there are a ton of people who are not interested in the military, and the numbers have kind of been declining of people who are going into the military. And we put so much money into the military, you would think that there'd be more people. Do you think that the United States should try and motivate more people to go into the military? Because at this point, it's decreasing in large numbers,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but
Yeah, so there's a few things to that. I think first of all, war is becoming so much more automated than it's ever been. There's so many more, like, I think 20 years from now it's not going to be man versus man. It's probably going to be machine versus machine.
Dude,
which
that's
is
so
really
scary.
It's terrifying because
That's
really it's
terrifying.
just which country has a better economy.
yeah,
Who has more cash to spend on these robots that are going to
Seriously.
fight each other.
yeah, man.
But which, like, you think that that's like Terminator shit, but it's really not. You already see it with drones. Like, there's airplanes that aren't being flown by men.
yeah, it's just a person in Nevada
It's crazy. And
behind a computer.
so in that sense, hypothetically, this is why we probably will never have the draft again. Hypothetically, unless it comes to like World War III and all of our resources are being exhausted and like we're being invaded. But honestly, like, we don't really need as many people as we needed when we were storming the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
in that sense, I think that it's not necessary. But in order for the general public to keep the interests of our nation at heart, I think that it's very important that they have a sense of national pride.
yeah.
And I really think that we're losing that in this generation.
Definitely, yeah, definitely national pride. I mean, you hear all the time people who just hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You know, I hate Donald Trump. He's our leader of the country. You know, like he's the dude. And yeah, national pride is super important. I mean, too much national pride is a pretty big problem. But like
Yeah.
a healthy amount of national pride is a good thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and now we're letting in a bunch of people who don't have national pride too with
Yeah.
immigration and all that. But yeah, I feel like having this revival of people actually saying that America is the greatest country on earth would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, automation is like a really scary thing in the military. Have you
Yeah.
seen the Boston Dynamics?
No, I've not.
So the Boston Dynamics, they're basically just creating a bunch of robots. You know the one that looks like a dog that walks around. You know that one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So they're like the stuff that they're doing at the Boston Dynamics is super crazy. But do you really think there will become? Do you really think there's going to be a point where no one is going to be on the battlefield? Like it's just going to be robots flying around?
I think that at the very most, like, or at the very least, there will at least, I don't know, be some like robotically enhanced people. Like, I'm not saying like kind of like Iron Man, but not as intense. Like, there might be some people with like, I don't know, were like they kind of like body armor, but like very technically advanced and like makes them stronger and stuff like that. Because I mean, it's all of this sounds like science fiction because a few years ago it was, but
Yeah.
like even with the way that prosthetics are moving, like you're finding people that can destroy people in arm wrestles because they have a prosthetic arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's
Seriously.
crazy.
Or yeah, people running marathons with bionic legs or whatever.
Yeah, like it's insane what's happening,
Yeah.
and it can't be ignored.
Yeah, man. I feel like this stuff is exponential. Like the amount
Yeah.
of growth in technology is just this exponential curve. Because, you know, since, you know, in the 1945 or whatever, we had really nice planes, but now we have like insanely good planes.
Yeah.
Like F-18 Super Hornets or whatever. Cost millions and millions of dollars. And, you know, computers. If you took all the computers that helped to get the man on the moon and, you know, transferred it all down, it wouldn't even be one computer today.
Yeah.
It's seriously insane. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like technology at this point is getting to a place where we're almost going to be able to make something sentient, you know,
Yeah.
have consciousness. So I don't know. This is kind of theory crafting at this point, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely scary having an artificial intelligence that can have more like that can have human emotions and like decide things for us, because like obviously
Yeah.
a computer has so much more power than a person because it doesn't have to doesn't have the same learning curve.
It's like that Black Mirror episode. I forget which one, but it's like
All of them.
pretty much all of them. Yeah, all the Black Mirror episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we're getting to a point in history where it's just the technology that we're creating today is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And it wouldn't have been possible without all these years of developing it. But all right, so moving on. So do you have a political opinion at all?
Yeah, I have a few.
You got a few political opinions? All right, awesome.
I got a few political opinions.
Nice. So do you think what's going on with this coronavirus,
Yep.
right? We're not sending out near as many test kits as we should be.
Yeah.
We aren't doing a very good job of trying to keep this thing secluded.
Yeah.
We're just telling people, hey, stay home.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not a very feasible solution to this. I mean, in where we're at, all the schools have been closed down, which is a pretty good step in the right direction. Do you think like what we're doing right now is okay with this coronavirus, or do you think there should be like really necessary improvements that are going on? I mean, it's kind of a framed question. But,
yeah, I mean, it's tough because this is kind of unprecedented. Like, other than in the movies, we haven't seen something spread at this rate, like in our country and around the world, and it's kind of wild. But I think that, so the Stafford Act was imposed 2 days ago, I guess 3 days ago now. And that basically freed up $150 billion for us to be sending test kits around. And that's the initiative that they're taking in Congress. They're actually sending a ton of test kits around now. So I think that in the next few days, those numbers of test kits will go way up. Yeah. I definitely think that should have happened sooner. Mm-hmm. But I think with all the checks and balances that our country has, like a state of emergency had to be declared in order for us to free up that many funds to send all those test kits. Which, yeah, you have to be, it's declaring a state of emergency. It's not something to be taken lightly. Like,
yeah,
it's pretty like
serious.
If I were Donald Trump, I would literally be sitting there thinking, wow, I really need to decide like what legacy I'm leaving. And every decision he makes, especially one of that gravity, it's going to reflect back on him. And so he's thinking, am I about to set a state of emergency for something that's not as bad as the common cold, or am I going to be like saving our like country's elders? Like,
yeah,
it's one of those things where like,
seriously,
you have to make that decision because you never really know how bad it truly is until like, cause like you can listen to experts and you can listen to different people, but there's so many different opinions out there that
like varying estimates too.
Yeah.
Like
varying
how many
estimates.
people are actually infected.
And the fact that we didn't really know how bad it was until Italy went through it, because with China, you never know what they're going to say. Italy is pretty transparent because they're like 7,000 people dead, this many people infected. It's like, okay, that is pretty crazy. Like,
that's a lot.
That means that like about when those statistics started coming out is when we started taking it more seriously.
Yeah. Which
kind of makes sense because you don't want to spend $150 billion on some intel that you get from China.
Yeah. Because China's super opaque. Like they are not.
Yeah, 100%.
They're not willing to give up information very easily.
It's really sketchy, and that's what you got to think about when criticizing our leaders. And obviously, there's some slimy stuff that you have to criticize, like when it comes to taking bribes and stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to decision making, like, I don't know, it's tough. Like, you got to put yourself in that situation, really.
Yeah, well, they're human, right? And so you got to expect that they're going to make mistakes and, they're going to have some hiccups throughout the way. I feel like Donald Trump has done a pretty good job throughout his presidency so far. It's just been riddled by, like, this very partisan way of Congress right now. It's just we're divided and we're not going to vote for anything that you propose. And, sorry. Like, that's just how it's been.
Yeah, it's really tough. I definitely think that Donald Trump's done an outstanding job as well.
He's given a lot of money to the military too, which I bet you're happy about.
I do believe that we should have a strong military, especially with all of like these existential threats all around the world with like Russia and China, and we owe a lot of people money. And
that's true.
If we put the amount of money that we put into the military into paying off our debt, it wouldn't even be a fraction of a percent.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, get ready for the worst.
Jeez, man. Yeah, that's another thing. It's like, who's gonna come collect their debt? No one's gonna come collect their debt. But I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. I don't know. I feel like these past few weeks, it's been really just strange. It's just been strange. People are not going outside. They're not going to church. Like I was at mass the other day. I was telling you this before we started, but there was like, it was so light. There was probably like a fourth of the people who normally go to mass on Sunday were there.
Yeah.
And it was just so weird because, communion took like 30 seconds to go up and receive. And I didn't see any of the people I normally talk to afterwards there. It's just been really, really strange, these past few weeks. And dude, you got to think about what it's doing to the economy. There's so many businesses who are just going to go out of business from this virus. And, I don't even know if the virus is as serious of a threat as it is being made out by the media, but there's going to be so many businesses that are going out of business. But
yeah, and that's tough for sure. It's definitely tough, but I mean, the way that the free market and capitalism works, once the virus is over, it's going to go back to its stable point. And which is tough because you hate to see like people that are already in poverty, you don't really mourn over, but people that have money that go into poverty, you tend to mourn over more. And that's just kind of, I think that's the way it's just going to shift. And at the end of the day, when this is all over, I think we're going to still have the same rates of poverty and there's still going to be like the same middle class. It's not going to be detrimentally off put by this virus, but yeah, it's weird how things work. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's an interesting point you made. We mourn over people who have money and lose money.
Yeah.
We don't mourn over people who are already poor.
Yeah.
Like, and the people we should be mourning over are the people who are already poor.
That's true.
I don't know. That's an interesting point you made. Yeah, so moving on to some more politics. You said Donald Trump, you think he's been doing a pretty standout job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
And I think he's done a very good job too. But, now we're seeing this rise of a reciprocal, radical movement. And I'm talking about Bernie Sanders, right? Because Bernie Sanders is like, Donald Trump was not radical, but he was running off of, I'm, anti-establishment.
Yep.
I'm against big government. I just want to allow people to make money freely. I'm not going to impose any regulations on, your business that, I'm not going to impose pollution regulations or whatever, what have you. But, now we're seeing this rise of Bernie Sanders, who's this opposite of Donald Trump. He wants a big government. He wants to have universal health care. He wants to, have whatever he's saying he wants to have, which is against Donald Trump's, ideas. Do you think that anyone really has a chance in the next election, or is it just going to be swept?
By Donald?
By the Donald.
So,
because it's looking to me like it's just going to be a sweep.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to think about the silent majority here. I think there's a silent majority of liberals who just are getting completely shut down by the loud voices of the new progressive democratic socialists. Yeah, Bernie Sanders definitely has a really loud following. And contrary to the last time he ran, he's actually got some people to back it up. Like, he's definitely got the numbers. Like, there's some people that are supporting him. But I don't think that the moderate liberals are going to gravitate to either not voting or voting for Donald Trump. I know a lot of family friends and even family that just didn't vote because they're like,
we hate both of you, right?
Yeah, we don't like
Trump
anyone,
and
so we're not going to vote.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty stupid philosophy because there's also a lot of people, like my brother included, who wrote in Bernie Sanders' name in the 2016 election, but then I asked them, would you rather have Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? And they're like, well, Hillary, of course. And I'm like, writing in Bernie's name isn't going to make him win. He couldn't even win the nomination.
Yeah.
So writing in his name just is taking a vote away from Hillary Clinton. And they're like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get that. It's like whenever there's a third party involved, they never win.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, you can't just write in Bernie's name and expect him to win.
Yeah, because he won't win.
Yeah. And if Biden gets the nominee, like, it's over. The guy can't even talk.
Yeah, like, I'm just trying to picture Donald Trump and Joe Biden having a debate.
Yeah, it's like Donald Trump would school him.
He would. Donald Trump isn't even that good at debating.
No, he just insults the other guy and makes a joke out of it. And it's hilarious.
It's very hilarious. It's comedic, and I think that in part that is like what's been missing from politics is the like lightheartedness. Like, people take it very seriously, which obviously it should be taken seriously. It's our nation's issues, but it goes from like, I don't know, there's definitely a happy medium. because
Yeah.
you don't always need to just be like saying your same talking points, because we get that a lot.
Yeah,
You're
it's like I want to bring back jobs. Well, yeah, so does every president. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
legitimately.
bring something new to the table.
Yeah,
But
it's-
yeah, if Biden gets the nominee, it's over. Like the guy can't even talk. I feel like most people. Well, I don't know most people, but a lot of people base their who they're voting off of on who they liked in the debate. It's like I
Yeah.
like this person. If Donald Trump has a debate with Joe Biden, it's over. Donald
Yeah.
Trump's gonna win. But
But I would like to see a Bernie Trump debate.
that'd be cool.
That would be pretty cool.
That'd be super cool. I mean, like completely different ideologies. Just I want this, you want that. Let's see who wins.
Yeah, I wish Trump was more quick-witted, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Mike Pence would run circles around Bernie in a debate,
Yeah.
but Trump, I mean, he's just, because I don't know if you saw the debates between who was Hillary's running mate.
Oh, I forget.
I forget, but him and Mike Pence had their like vice presidential debates.
Really?
They were pretty insane. I would recommend that you watch them.
Yeah.
They're,
I'll give it a listen.
like, Mike Pence is a very smart guy,
Yeah.
which you don't really get that sense from like all the jokes that are made about him.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if you saw the like video that he sent to Venezuela
No, I
about
didn't.
like all like the shit that's going down in there.
Dude, Venezuela's messed up right now.
Yeah, but he sent like a little like promotional video, and he was like, Venezuela, estamos con ustedes. Which like is just, I don't know if anyone that speaks Spanish would know that that's just like terrible pronunciation, and like
Yeah.
literally like as white as it gets when you're trying to speak Spanish. And it's just
Dude, that's
he sounded
great.
like a complete idiot.
That's
Like,
great. That's great. Yeah, Mike
no,
Pence. I
he's-
mean, if you're gonna be a vice president of any country, you need to be a smart guy.
Yeah,
You need to be a smart guy. I mean,
because like out of everyone in your party, the president picks you to run with.
that's right. That's right. Donald Trump, man, he's probably the funniest president we've had. Can I say that?
Yeah.
He's probably the funniest. Well, maybe Reagan.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan was pretty.
Reagan was pretty funny too. But
And-
I mean, Donald Trump, he just doesn't care, man.
Also,
Just
Bush was just funny because like
he was just intrinsically funny. You
like
know?
not, because we got to make fun of him.
Yeah,
Like-
yeah. That quote when he was I'm forgetting what it says. Fool
There's
me
an old-
once, fool
There,
me
no,
once,
no, no.
You know?
There's an old saying in Texas. I think it's in Texas. I think maybe it's in Tennessee. Fool me once, shame on you. You fool, you can't get fooled again.
Can't get fooled again. Man, that was just. I watched that just just gonna need a laugh in the day, and it's crazy. He was our president. He's just.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. But
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Or have you seen the Ronald Reagan missed me video?
no,
So like recent, like his first speech back after getting shot.
Really?
He was making a speech and a balloon popped, and he just goes, "Missed me."
oh Ronald. He was an actor in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He was an actor in Hollywood. He's been through the media. He understands. You gotta be lighthearted. You gotta
Yeah.
make a joke. I feel like people really respect that now. It's like just having a fun time, making a joke. I mean, not being facetious, taking it seriously.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of it is charisma for sure.
Oh, definitely. Like
I mean,
JFK.
that's why he was able to win 49 states. Like that's crazy.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
He won 49 states.
Yeah.
That's
He-
insane.
He's like the only Republican to ever win California.
it's crazy, man. Yeah, just being charismatic, winning the presidency.
There's a
Yeah.
lot
So let's move on a little bit economic stuff. So,
Yeah.
do you think in America we're pretty spread out?
Yep.
We're pretty diverse. We got a lot of differences.
Yeah.
The South is really different from the North and the West. The West different from the North, and
Yeah.
we just have regional differences, different interests in our economy, right? Do you think that there could come a time in America where we set up some sort of socialist, we provide for all the states, we all pay taxes to the government, and they distribute it pretty equally amongst the people so that we can have universal health care, all kids who are going to colleges, we're going to pay for that because the rates for college at this point are insane. People are spending like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on school, which is just crazy. Do you think and it's really popular amongst young people too. It's like, I want my healthcare paid for, I want my college paid for.
Yeah.
Do you think there could come a time in America where we adopt more socialist aspects of our economy?
I think there could. I think that socialism right now is way ahead of its time. I think that in order for people to be on board with socialism, there has to be some kind of crisis. that there's like the vast majority of people can't take care of themselves. Right now in America, if you live here, like you're already above the international poverty line by a lot, and it's just, I think the happy balance is having just enough like socialized like welfare and these help programs that basically ensure that you'll be able to survive. Like people in the United States don't die of starvation unless they're on meth. Like
Yeah.
which is outstanding. There's
It's
people
great.
in Africa and people in Mexico that die of starvation all the time. So like as long as you make sure that your lower class is taken care of and like is able to survive, like until once that stops being possible, I think that's when more people will maybe shift towards socialism. And I think that a lot of that is going to come with automation and machines taking people's jobs. That's why I say that socialism is way ahead of its time, because I don't think we're going to be moving on to that until people start losing jobs because of automation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like that makes total sense that socialism is ahead of its time, because at this point in America, the system that seems to be working the best is a capitalist structure.
Yeah.
And a transition to a socialist economy would first off hurt a ton of people. Like my family included. My dad's an entrepreneur. And so if he got hit with like a 60% tax on all his income, we would seriously have to move out of the house that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So, and one thing that's really kind of a part with socialism is we see that there's a tyranny of the people who have, well, just the 1%. There's a tyranny of the 1%. And so that's the main thing they talk about. Do you see there's something intrinsically wrong with having, do you think that there's something intrinsically wrong with having so much money? Like, your Bill Gates, your Warren Buffetts, who have billions and billions of dollars. Do you think there's something intrinsically wrong with that? Because I don't. But there's some people who see those people and say that, the way that they got there is they had to stand on the heads of the people working, What do you think of that?
So
I feel like that's a wrong narrative.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about that. There's definitely two sides. I think that the wealthy are pretty much responsible for like every single job in the country aside from the government jobs. So I think that it's very necessary to have money. And I think that being able to make that much money is what gets people up in the morning. Like if I had no hope, obviously when it comes to hundreds of billions of dollars, like you got to get to the point where you're like, all right,
yeah,
chill. But I don't know. I think that you should be able to have that much money, but it shouldn't mean that you should be able to do things like dodge taxes. I think that we have way too many tax loopholes.
Definitely.
I don't think there's anything wrong with our current tax structure with the bracketing system that we have. That's why I think that Bernie Sanders is so wrong with his new idea that he's going to tax all these people, because putting higher taxes on people that know how to dodge taxes isn't going to do much. It's just going to hurt the middle class, because the middle class doesn't know how to dodge taxes. They don't have those capabilities.
Yeah.
Because they're not hiding behind their corporations.
Yeah.
I think that eliminating the tax loopholes and making people like Jeff Bezos pay on their income tax is going to get enough money flow into our nation that we'll be able to fix a lot of these issues that are making people want to turn to democratic socialism.
Yeah. That was pretty crazy that Jeff Bezos didn't pay a cent on income tax.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Crazy.
And it's crazy that tax loopholes still exist. I mean, if you're a middle-class citizen, you pay your taxes. You just pay them. Like you don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But when, these corporations who are making billions and billions of dollars find out that they can save billions and billions of dollars,
Yeah.
they're going to do it. They're going to take every step to dodging taxes.
Yeah.
Like the Cayman Islands, tax havens, sending your money over there. It's like that shouldn't be allowed. And the only way it really is allowed is because these billionaires are paying politicians to keep these tax loopholes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a theory, of course. We can't really prove it, but I'm sure that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But another thing, I feel like when these billion-dollar corporations are making so much money, the people at the bottom, there's this idea that the people at the bottom, seriously, they don't make much, and that by global standards they're making a ton, first off.
Yeah.
But the actual materials that they're getting from their position in the world isn't as much.
Yeah.
Right. But there's this idea that we could just take a fraction of a percentage of what these big billionaires are raking in every year, and we could supply so much materials for all the people across the world. Why shouldn't we do it? And I feel like there's this idea that we need to uphold what made the country great, which is not imposing regulations on businesses, but letting them have free reins to do whatever they want. But I feel like we're almost at a time now where we could transfer some of the wealth of the upper class to some of the poor of the country. And there's this adversity to taking any money away from anyone outside of taxes. And increasing taxes has always been frowned upon. But we've had this system in America that's been, we don't tax the rich, but we tax the middle class since Reagan. And I don't know if it's a long-term solution. It doesn't seem like a very stable solution because the middle class's tax burden is going to be increased over time.
Yeah.
And I feel like we could shift the tax burden a little bit more towards the upper percent. I mean, maybe not a whole ton. Like the bracketing system we have now seems to be working okay, but is there a really, really long-term play?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like voodoo economics, Reaganomics, all that?
Yeah. I think that there is something to be said for the money will be trickling down when it's up in the rich, because when you have money, you have to get things done. And when you have money and having to get things done, you need people of lower status to help you to do the stuff that you don't want to do. And you're going to pay them for that. And that's money going from up to down, which is awesome. It's a great theory and I like it. But also I think that the issue with the upper class having, like you said, talked about them having a higher or a heavier tax burden, which I think right now their theoretical on paper tax burden is plenty. I just think that they're not paying it, and they should be. Like it's stupid that they should be getting away with that, and like it kind of nullifies all of these other arguments if the rich just pay their taxes.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I mean, you just think about how much money the government would have made to spend on, education, improving the lives of the poor if Jeff Bezos would have just simply paid his income tax. That's billions and billions of dollars we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel like that's also a big problem. And so this kind of segues into another question. It's like, how much corruption do you really think is going on in our government? Do you think it's a ton? Do you think it's not a ton? I mean, corruption's been a part of American government since its day one, right? Like there was a story about Ulysses S. Grant, I think I told on an earlier podcast, where he was given money to give to the Native Americans who didn't have blankets, who didn't have clothes, who didn't have, food, because they were all crammed on this reservation, and he basically just pocketed the money. And as a result of that, thousands of Native Americans died because they just didn't have blankets and food. And so, yeah, like that's a real corruption story in American politics, in American history. Do you think it's just been kind of a continuation of this corruption that we've had from day one? Like, how much corruption do you really think is going on in America's government?
So there's really no way to put a number on it, because that's the thing about corruption, is it's done in the shadows. I tend to believe that there's less corruption than a lot of people believe, but I also think that there's not no corruption, because there's something to be said for people going into politics that want to actually make changes. And I think a lot of people do. One thing I'll say about Bernie Sanders is I think he's one of them, even though I feel like ideologically him and I are on complete opposite sides of the spectrum. People like him, I think that there's more of them than people come to believe, or people decide to believe. But yeah, there's definitely people being paid off. I wouldn't say. I'd say that it's less than 30% though.
Really?
Of the people in Congress.
Yeah, because it's really necessary for any society to have trust in your government.
Yeah.
Like just trust in your government. And I don't think most of the American citizens have trust in their government. It's like I don't trust my politicians. I don't vote really because what difference does it really make? And I feel that people kind of see American politics as like a hopeless case. That these big billionaires are just going to end up making the laws, and the issues that I want to see get addressed are just been pushed back because who cares about my interests? But on the global spectrum, America's government is probably the best setup in the world.
Yeah.
You can make an argument about China and the strides that they've made in the last 30, 40 years. But just purely off of what we value, which is freedom of speech. I want to be able to criticize my government. I want to be able to criticize whoever I want, whenever I want, right? That seems to be the best system. Because we believe in America since Hamilton won out, that the person has intrinsic value. Mm-hmm. That all peoples should, well, I mean, not initially, but through history, in America, we've thought that people should have the right to vote, and we need to give it to them because we believe that the citizens know what is the best for our country as a whole, and we should respect their decisions. And I feel like that's the best system, is that we respect the individual enough to make decisions for the country.
Yep.
Democracy, put simply. So, considering the global spectrum, America has tried to somewhat impose their beliefs on other countries, right? Like there's many times when we'll go into a country, assassinate the leader that we don't like, and then we'll put in a leader that we do like that isn't democratically elected. Do you think that America spreading its ideology is fundamentally good? Or do you think that there are some societies where we've had this democratic structure that we've been trying to impose that haven't worked, that have failed, that we tried to impose our beliefs on and it just didn't work? Do you think this is kind of a universal idea that should be implemented around the world, that people should be able to criticize their government, or do you think that there's regional differences that really shape how the government should be structured?
Yeah, I think that our rights, as outlined in the Constitution, are human rights, and they should apply to everyone in the world. Do I think that we should be going in and assassinating people and then just like putting some other guy in power? Not necessarily. I think that we could do part of that. I think that us deciding who goes into office is more messed up. Us assassinating like someone who's like oppressing the people and gassing its own citizens, like Saddam Hussein, like if we like assassinate him, that's fine in my opinion. But I don't think that we should be picking who goes in next. I think sometimes what we've done is we've allowed these, like, I think with some small countries in the Middle East, we've done that, but then we've like allowed them to produce candidates that they elect. And then we provide protection, usually in the form of private military, to make sure that like the crazy, like power hungry people from the government don't assassinate them when they're running. But yeah, I think when you democratically elect someone, that's the best. But I think us just saying like, okay, like you're now in charge of this country, that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of risky.
It's definitely risky.
It's definitely slimy because
it's super slimy.
We can like, I don't know, it's just you can't trust any individual to have the best interests at heart.
Definitely. Yeah, and there's been a real problem with that. Like we've done that to numerous countries where we just go in, assassinate the leader, and then we put in someone else, and then the country is in turmoil.
Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't really work. So back onto the military and what you want to do with the military. Do you see that the wars that we're fighting now are really for people who just want to make a buck? And, would you be okay with going to a war that is only going to help not just the general population of America, but just the wealthy. Because, I wouldn't want to fight a war where I know that it's only for oil, for improving the lives of just, a small number of Americans. I mean, we haven't had a total war.
Yeah.
You could argue Vietnam, and I'd say Vietnam, but a worldwide war that we're really fighting evil since Nazi Germany, where we saw, okay, they're doing really bad things, they're hurting Jews, they're doing this, they're doing that, and that's evil, and we need to go in and we need to stop evil. I feel like that narrative is still being pushed today, which is we're fighting evil in the Middle East. We're fighting evil in, all these countries that we're fighting. But I don't think it's necessarily evil, but we're fighting for oil. We're fighting for resources. It's kind of this continuation of colonialism, colonizing and extracting resources. Would you be okay with going to a war where you know that what you're fighting for is going to improve the lives of a small number of Americans, and we're not actually fighting for evil?
Yeah, so I think one place where you have to be careful is saying that, like, all of the evil, quote unquote, that we're fighting is just a narrative and that it's 100% for oil. Because obviously that is something that our government takes into consideration, that we're benefiting and that these oil companies are benefiting from it. But I think that there is definitely, as someone who knows a lot of people who have been in these wars, they are there, like, not only to secure these oil rigs. A lot of it is just like being in like Fallujah, where there isn't an oil rig anywhere near there, trying to eliminate this radical presence of people who just kill a ton of the innocent people, and they're among them. And then those people that they're also killing also have their own narrative of trying to eliminate everyone in America. And that's how you see, like, these attacks of terrorism on us. And, like, I mean, you got to think about, like, the reason why we mobilized super heavily. The reason why it began wasn't I mean, we were in there before for the maybe more oil reasons, but in 2001, when Bush seriously mobilized all of our troops into the Middle East, it was because they killed almost 3,000 Americans. And there's something to be said for that. And, like, I think if we let these radical terrorists, as we would call them, not everyone would call them that, but I think that if their sole mission is to destroy us and we don't do anything about that, that there will be more 9/11s happening.
Yeah.
And so I'm not denying the fact that we're in there for oil, because we are, but there's definitely more to that, like, more to us being in the Middle East, because there's no way that an entire Congress would approve that many troops being sent there if we were just there for oil.
Yeah, unless 9/11 had happened.
Yeah.
Right? That's a good point. Yeah, so you could say that whenever Americans die, we have some responsibility for going into the country and doing something about it. And so it's not necessarily that we're just in there for oil, but also sending a message to the world that we're not going to be pushovers.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, who knows how valuable that is.
Yeah, I mean, it could send a message to Russia, China.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've seen Red Dawn, but, like, China, like, completely invades us, and, like, that is definitely a fear, because we don't want to be invaded from above by a bunch of Chinese paratroopers. And, like, I don't know, like, being strong just tells people F off. Like, we don't want Russia, like, thinking that, oh, if they can be pushed over by some, like, Middle Eastern people that are operating out of caves and have very little funding, then imagine if we tried to mess with them. Like, we could easily take them over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
So, I mean, sending a message, like, I understand its importance, but when you mobilize a bunch of troops, people actually die.
Yep.
And so you got to really consider, is it worth getting into a war over this? But I mean, you got to think, how much do you value setting showing the world that you actually have force and that you're willing to use it at a moment's notice. And another thing, I feel like now we're moving towards, like we mentioned earlier, a war that won't involve people. just automated wars.
Yeah.
And America has so much money that we put into our military. We're the number one we're the number one economic force and also military force in the world. What do you think would be the greatest national threat to America at this point? Do you think it's Russia, China? Do you think it's, some other country that could mobilize its troops and just attack America out of the blue?
Yeah, so
Or do you think it's something different? Like the national security at this point would be, a virus.
Yeah, so from a military standpoint, when thinking about joining the military, you can actually make a lot of money if you learn the language of the country that you are likely to be at war with. So like if you learn Arabic, you're making like $1,200 a month extra.
Jeez.
And right now, if you learn Russian, you're probably making $600 to $700 a month. And so I was like, okay, I should learn Arabic. But then after talking to a lot of my friends in the military that are pretty high up, and that they're saying, no, you should be learning Russian, because by the time the Middle East is dying down. There's no doubt about it. Like, we have eliminated so many of the threats somehow because it's such an impossible thing. That's the thing about insurgencies. They hide among the people, so you don't know who to kill until they start shooting at you. But aside from that, by the time I'm in the military, probably 5 years from now, a lot of the people that I talked with don't think that we'll really be as heavily in the Middle East. They think that we'll be pretty much done with it, especially since we're nationalizing oil.
Yeah.
So we won't be relying on them as much. But yeah, they think that every single person I talked to who has a lot of insight on our national security and clearance and stuff like that, like literally top secret clearance, they told me that they think Russia's the next big threat, and that there's just been so many political interventions and them trying to mess with us that once we're not focused on the Middle East anymore, we're going to start having more conflicts with them, and that Russian's the language to learn, man. So I think that they're probably our biggest national security threat.
Yeah. Yeah, Putin just got reelected, right? Yeah, I think it was just reelected. Well, he got an extension or something like that. An extension. You basically just,
It's pretty shady what's going on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Putin, he used to be a KGB, he was a spy for a while. Putin, man.
Yeah, dude, the KGB it's pretty crazy. Like,
yeah, seriously.
They're
man.
definitely like comparable to our special forces and our like CIA and Navy SEALs and everything. Like you can easily compare them. Like Russians are badass, dude.
They are badass, man.
I'm not afraid, like from a military standpoint, to go to war with any nation other than Russia.
Seriously, man.
I feel like there's a new video every day of some Russian like breaking a brick wall with their forehead.
Yeah, yeah. Or like jumping off a super high place and just like surviving,
Yeah. You got to think about it. The conditions there are brutal.
Seriously.
And
seriously brutal.
They're just potato fed units. Like they're insane.
Russia is crazy. They're an enigma. And so many people have tried to conquer Russia and failed. It just not worked.
The home court advantage with that harsh of conditions.
Yeah, seriously. Napoleon.
And they're so spread out that bombing them would hardly do anything.
That's right. I mean, you could bomb Moscow, but are you going to bomb, Leningrad and all the other places? It's thousands of miles apart.
Yeah, you're going to waste $1 million bomb on like 20 people.
Seriously. Yeah, well, what's the northern part of Russia? I forget the name. Northern East, Siberia.
Yeah.
Siberia alone is larger than the size of the United States just by land. Right? You think about all the resources that are up in Siberia. Like they have the most land and probably the most resources. Oil, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever resources you got up there. So like I totally see them as a national threat. And we've been at odds with Russia since the end of World War II. And it's just been this Cold War that somewhat ended with the separation between Russia and the USSR when the USSR kind of died. But we've still always had this threat of Russia in the back of our head.
Yeah.
And we have different values, different ideology, and things have slowed down since 1996 is when the USSR died or whatever. But it might have been earlier. But yeah, I don't know, man. I see Russia as a pretty crazy place. Just so spread out. Just crazy people, like insane people.
It's definitely scary. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think the next threat is probably China.
Definitely China.
But the thing about China is, if someone owes you trillions of dollars, are you gonna kill them? 'Cause then they can't pay back your debt.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Are we ever going to pay back our debt?
I don't think so.
What are we at? Like 27 trillion or something crazy like that?
Yeah, I think it's like 23 trillion.
23
but
trillion?
It's either way, like that's a lot of
That's
money.
not payable,
Yeah.
Well, it is payable, but we're not going to pay it. They'll
Yeah.
bankrupt America. If
We
pay
are.
back our debt.
That's especially if socialism happens and we begin trying to fund all these huge progressive ideas that
Cost billions of dollars.
The Green Deal alone, the proposed budget was between 53 and 93 trillion dollars.
$1 trillion. Jeez, man.
You have to put that in perspective. When you divide the total number of American households by $93 trillion, that is $600,000. And the Green New Deal was supposed to happen over the span of 10 years.
Yeah, right.
So that means that every American household has to be taxed $60,000 a year for 10 years. And most people, they can't afford that. And they can't even afford to take their family out to dinner.
Seriously, man.
That costs like $100.
Seriously, yeah.
How are they supposed to muster up $60,000 a year?
Yeah, especially
they don't
when
even
wages,
make that.
Yeah, especially when wages have been stagnating too. Like people are not making more money.
Yeah, and I think that if we're gonna be able to free up $93 trillion, we should just use it to pay off the debt, and then use the $70 million or $1 trillion that we have left to do whatever progressive things we need. Because I think paying off our debt is far more important than whatever. Balancing the budget is probably the number one most important thing to do.
Yeah.
Because so many other benefits come from that.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean this whole debt thing is really scary. It's like it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
we're just going to accumulate more and more debt. Well, that doesn't seem like a very long-term solution.
It's the same with basic personal finance. Like, debt is a prison. You can't do what you want or should be doing because you have this big debt prism around you, and there's really nothing you can do. Like, you can't really make more money until you get rid of the money that you owe.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. I mean, the person who is in debt is pretty much a slave of the person who owns your debt.
Exactly.
So, we do have the largest military in the world, and, we're strong. But there's going to come a time when America's going to die if we don't actually address this debt problem. Like, when you set up a country, you set it up for a long term.
Yeah.
You set up the country for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, And right now, it seems like we're doing a lot of expedient things, spending more money than we take in. Seems pretty expedient. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know any clear solution to this too.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that the Democratic Party has really, really changed since it began. I mean, even when Bill Clinton was president, Democratic Party is now known for the people that spend a ton of money on social programs, and it ends up putting us more in debt. Obama increased our debt by probably $10 trillion. And that's crazy. That's almost doubling it. But if you look at even back when Bill Clinton was president, he balanced his own budget. He wasn't able to pay off the national debt, but he didn't bring us more into debt. And also, if you look at Andrew Jackson, he paid off all of the national debt. Obviously, there was not nearly as much as there is now back then. That's just another Democrat that, I don't know, the Democratic Party has definitely shifted because...
Yeah, they're so establishment.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like if you're in the Democratic Party, you have to please the people who are above you in the Democratic Party. It's not based off your merits. It's based off of who you know, how charismatic you are. You know, how can you kiss the most ass to get to your position?
Exactly.
And that's not how it should be run. I think it should be based off your merits. Like, what have you actually done? What has Hillary Clinton done? I don't even know. Like,
gotten a ton of money from her quote unquote charity.
Charities, yeah. From her charities, killed people. Yeah.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
Epstein didn't kill himself. I feel like, dude, that whole Epstein thing just blew over. And no one really said anything after it. It's like, oh, that's 2 weeks old. Who cares? You know, they just got away with it. I say they. Who's they? I don't know. But, dude, I feel like, yeah, of course Epstein didn't kill himself. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I mean, look at the facts, okay?
Just think about all the circumstances.
He's on suicide watch 24/7. Someone is watching him.
Yeah.
It is literally the oldest trick in the book to say that the security guard fell asleep.
Yeah. Security guard fell asleep. Cameras weren't working. Sorry. He's just dead.
Yeah.
And then they had like 3 people examine his body.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
And then his brother tried to have a private investigator examine it.
And they declined him.
They didn't let him.
They didn't let him. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Like, how is that not so clearly him not killing himself?
Yeah.
And it's just pushed again. It's just pushed along as like one of those other conspiracy theories.
It's
like,
not a conspiracy theory.
Like,
it's
you can't put that in the same category as the moon landing was fake and Bush did 9/11.
Absolutely not. It's like those don't have any evidence. You know, it's like, well, I mean, I shouldn't say they have no evidence, but I mean, their evidence is...
I mean, they have motives, and that's why they become conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
A conspiracy theory is literally motive with no evidence.
Yeah. But this has evidence. This
isn't a theory. This is
like, we seriously have evidence.
Like, I would almost go as far as to say it's fact.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy to me that all this just gets pushed aside. It's like, oh, that's 2 weeks old. Who cares about 2 weeks ago? You know?
Yeah, because then there's things like the coronavirus happening that just completely shift everyone's things. Or like they start heavily impeaching Trump, and that's all they talk about. So they're not going to talk about Epstein anymore.
Yeah, yeah, dude.
It's completely the fault of the mainstream media.
I hate the media.
Me too.
I read a book by Noam Chomsky. He's just Jew. I said that bad. He's a Jewish guy. He's a Jew. No, he's just Jewish guy, but he's super smart. I said that only because.
But
I said that only because it seems weird that there's just so many Jewish people who are unbelievably intelligent. Yeah. Have you noticed that? Like, Eastern Europeans are Nobel Prize winners, like by a large majority. It's like, why Eastern European Jews? But who knows? It's, I'm not anti-Semite. I love Jewish people.
If anything, you're complimenting them. There's no point in. I mean, you can't really call it racism if you're giving them a compliment.
Thank you.
And you call it a generalization.
It just sounded weird. He's like, he's a Jew.
100%. But yeah, I mean, that's why they've been so hated over the course of history, is because
they're successful.
They're successful, and if you're successful, you're hated. That's just how it works in this world.
Yeah. Yeah, but so he wrote a book called Manufacturing Consent, and basically what he talked about is how the media's interest are for making money. They're a corporation. Like, the media makes money off of advertisers giving them money, and the reason why advertisers give them money is because they get eyeballs on their stuff. And so the best way to get eyeballs on their stuff is you create news that isn't actually news. You know, I don't watch the news. I mean, I'll read an article every once in a while, but the things that are now considered newsworthy would not have been considered newsworthy like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And I really think it can be attributed to these news companies, you know, your New York Times, your Washington Post, your whatever, who have to make money off of advertisers. And so what they end up doing is, you know, creating these clickbaity headlines like, you know, Donald Trump has coronavirus and, you know, the country's going to hell because of coronavirus. It's like a lot of the problems in America aren't actually problems. They're just being pushed by the media because it gets eyeballs.
Yep.
And I don't know. Donald Trump talks about fake news all the time. Fake news, fake news, fake news. It's true.
Yeah.
Fake news actually exists, and there's people out there who are just putting out these headlines and making all these broad claims about things just because they need money.
Unbelievable. Well, I will say though, there is a chance that Donald Trump has coronavirus.
I did hear about that. I did with a Brazilian leader or something.
Yeah, there's a picture of them with their arms around each other 6 days ago, and he got
tested.
diagnosed with, and the Brazilian guy got diagnosed with coronavirus the next day.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump's in the age of risk. Like,
He's old, man.
if at his age, there's a 1 in 12 chance of him dying.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means that Mike Pence is running now. I mean, I think that would make it even easier to sweep
Yeah.
the election.
Mike Pence, man, he's solid. Like, he's a really solid guy.
Yeah, but I don't know like how that would exactly work as far as getting reelected goes. I don't know if they'd like redo the primaries or if it's just like, yeah, I'm sure Pence would just be the person running for president, but
That'd be crazy.
It's
That would be
pretty crazy.
crazy.
that would be crazy.
Like, Tom Hanks got coronavirus. And when Tom
Yeah.
Hanks got coronavirus, be like, whoa, this is serious.
yeah, it's like, oh,
It's like, 'cause
this
he's-
could get anyone now.
Yeah, seriously. Because he's a big public figure. And, he got coronavirus. And so people saw that. And so they had this fear. But, dude, if Donald Trump got coronavirus, stocks would tank. They would go to the shitter. I mean, they're already
That's why I
terrible.
think that's why he's refusing to get tested.
Really?
Like, that's the thing. Like, your job, his job as the face of our country is to prevent people from freaking out. And
Yeah.
if he gets coronavirus, people are gonna freak out.
Yeah, mass hysteria.
And so many bad things are gonna happen. Like, it's like terrifying what could happen if Donald Trump got coronavirus.
Yeah.
But all of these media people are just saying like, oh, he doesn't want to do it because of his own political reasons, and he thinks that he won't be able to get reelected if he has coronavirus. It's like, how narrow-minded do you have
Yeah,
to be to not be able to
seriously.
see the bigger picture that
Yeah, he has the country's interest
he
at heart.
realizes that as the face of the country, if he gets coronavirus, it's game over.
Seriously.
It would be unbelievable.
I hate all the political maneuvering that's going on.
Yeah.
It's like, it seems like we're at odds with each other, the Democrats and the Republicans, because of this coronavirus thing. It's not. We should be working together. It's like we both care about the health of our citizens. It's like we both care that our country survives. We both care that we don't want to see so many old people die, so many people get sick. We don't want to see our economy bad. It's like what we need to be doing is working together in this. But no, it's been used as this political maneuvering to make Donald Trump look bad so that they can win the election.
Yeah.
If this wasn't an election year, I feel like this coronavirus thing would have been addressed a lot sooner and easier.
Yeah.
But since it's an election year, people are saying, oh, well, we can take Donald Trump and we can say how bad of a job he's doing with this coronavirus and frame him as a person who doesn't care about the health of his nation, and then we'll win the election. It's like, how narrow-minded do you got to be?
Yeah, it's like, tell us what you would do if you were in charge. And they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, exactly. People are so quick to say that, we could do a better job in the position. If we were the president, I could be doing a better job. It's like the armchair general, or armchair quarterback, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like I can sit around on the sidelines and tell you how you're messing up in 100 ways. But if I was in the position,
Exactly.
geez, man, lazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so let's move on to some, hot button issues, right?
Alright.
Like things that, people like to talk about. Do you got a position on gun control?
You could say that.
You got a position on gun control? You mentioned earlier, well, you want to be in the military, so I'd assume you're pro-gun.
I like my guns.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think that there's a lot of factors of gun control and just, I don't know, the right to own them that people don't really consider. Like, when you think of, well, first of all, there are the statistics that the cities and states with the biggest gun control have the most shootings. There is something to be said for guns being owned by law-abiding private citizens being a deterrent. There's definitely something to be said for that because, like, probably most of the shootings that happen are in California. I mean, they happen all over the country, but there are so many happening in California.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to get a gun. Like, I mean, in California, it's
Yeah,
harder
definitely.
than like in Texas. In
Or
Texas,
Nevada or something.
in Texas, I'm 18. I could go to any hunting store get an AR-15. That is the right as that's the Second
That's my
Amendment.
right.
That's the Second Amendment right.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said. Like a couple months ago, there was a church shooting. I believe that it was 3 rounds that the shooter was able to get off before 6 armed, law-abiding private citizens in that church all unloaded on him.
They all brought a gun to church?
Exactly.
That's hilarious. Where was this? Texas?
Yeah, I was in Texas.
That's hilarious.
In Texas. That's crazy. And like nothing like that ever happens in California.
Yeah.
And there's also something to be said for the fact that if we create a law where people have to turn in their weapons, or if we create a law where you're not allowed to get weapons, obviously it's only going to affect the people that abide by laws. And the people that abide by laws are probably not going to be shooting stuff or shooting people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The law, just think about it. So since 1960, one of the most illegal substances in our country has been cocaine.
Yeah.
It's been one of the most sought after things. As a high schooler, I could get cocaine.
Yeah.
When I was 16, I could have probably gotten cocaine.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying. But it's just the black market overpowers the law in many ways.
Tons of ways.
Guns are a $50 billion a year industry. And let me just talk about the prices of cocaine. In Colombia, a kilo of cocaine costs about 2,500% less than after, when it's there than after it's been smuggled up to America. And that is why
2,500% less?
After you smuggle cocaine from Colombia through Mexico up to America, it exponentially increases. And cocaine is super expensive, but it's super cheap to make. It's not that hard to make. The only thing is that not that many people are able to make it here because it's got to be made somewhere tropical. So all these cartels make so much money bringing up cocaine. If we make guns illegal, $50 billion a year increased by the amount that cocaine is, the import increase in price, that would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of American money of people illegally purchasing firearms, because people are still going to want to purchase firearms.
That's for sure.
And we're Americans. We don't listen to the government.
Guns are just a part of our society. People are going to want guns.
We will be spending tons of money on these Mexican illegal imports of guns because the cartel will will provide whatever will profit it the most, and we'll be just funneling so much money into Mexico, and it's just gonna hurt our economy.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that,
Definitely,
for sure.
definitely.
But also, as far as a national security standpoint, you have to look at that. So there was over 500,000 hunting licenses granted and was this last year in 2019 in the state of Wisconsin alone. Back to a lot of the high up military people that I know, my cousin's a high level Navy SEAL, and he does a lot of these what ifs. That's his job. He does a ton of what ifs. What if China invades us tomorrow? They look at where they need to put their money and they're like, okay, we need to put a ton of our preventative measures in New York and California and Washington because there's not that many guns there. But they look and they see, okay, there's 500,000 hunting licenses in the state of Wisconsin. They'll be fine.
Really?
Because that means if you have a hunting license, odds are you have a gun.
You got a gun. You can defend yourself.
So that's
an interesting point. I never even thought about that.
I know. It's something that a lot of people don't think of. It's national security as well.
Yeah.
It's just there's something to be thought about. And obviously, I don't think that the mentally ill should be able to purchase firearms.
Yeah, that's just a given. I mean,
It's a
we're not
given.
arguing that they
And
should. You know?
not most conservatives don't believe that. There are people in the NRA that think that everyone should have one.
That's just
And it's illogical for sure. And that there shouldn't be background checks. Obviously, there should be background checks. But most I don't think there's more than 5 people in our politics that believe that there should be no background checks.
Yeah.
Only the super radical libertarians, if anything.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's just kind of the weird narrative that's been pushed. It's like, the NRA wants to give guns to mentally ill people so that they can kill you. It's like, no, the NRA maybe, but not your politicians.
I mean, most of the NRA, not even.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a conscience,
Yeah.
if you're just a moral guy, like you just have a conscience, you got common sense, we'll say. You don't want to give guns to mentally ill people.
Yeah, it doesn't make
That's
sense.
not your point. But to one of your earlier points, you said that in Texas there was this guy, he came and he shot 3 bullets and 6 people killed him with guns because they all had guns. There's something to be said about having guns in an area that helps prevent crime.
Yeah.
Like California, like you said, we have a ton of gun violence.
Yeah.
And if more people had guns, who knows if the gun violence would go down? Because
Yeah.
maybe that person who's robbing the gas station might not go in, because he might die, right?
Yeah.
But he kind of has a sense of security that the guy behind the counter probably doesn't have a gun in there, and I do have a gun.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about that. But there's a real threat with people who are citizens who can pass a background check, who do want to kill people.
Yeah.
Like that guy in Nevada, or was it Nevada? Las Vegas, the Las Vegas shooter.
Yeah.
He was just a normal dude.
Yeah.
He was just a straight normal dude. He brought in like a ton of suitcases. He stocked up with weapons, and he mowed down a whole crowd of people.
Yeah.
Like that's a real threat. And so, in America, I think we could say we have a mental health problem.
Yeah.
Like we have a serious mental health problem with American citizens, and the limiting of guns might help prevent these mass killings.
Mm.
Do you see that it's kind of a hopeless case at this point to really start trying to regulate all the guns that we're manufacturing, and that we should just keep going, full speed ahead with the guns that we're manufacturing? Or do you think that we should try and, somewhat limit the amount of guns that we're producing that might help the cause?
So
Because what we're really getting at is preventing gun violence.
So yeah, I do believe that we should continue full steam ahead in the production of guns, and here's why. This is a very cliche gun control talking point, but it's like the most cliche. But the problem is the evil that is in people's hearts. It's not the guns, and I have some evidence to back that up. Historically, since the 90s, the times where we've had the least amount of gun violence has actually been when we have the most guns per person. There was a point in time where we had, I think in 2008, when there was about 2.2 guns per American citizen in America, which is crazy. But also, that was like the year of the lowest. It might have been 2003. I'm kind of mixing up my years. But that was the lowest gun violence that there's been in the last 30 years. But in the years where we've had the most gun violence, it's when we've had also the highest suicide rate. So 60% of gun violence is actually suicides.
Really?
Yeah. So that's what a lot of people don't really take into consideration when they see all these statistics, like this many people die from gun violence. So mass shootings are scary, right? They're terrifying. But as far as the loss of life, mass shootings account for less than 1% of gun deaths in America. Mass shootings. Because there's so many gun deaths. You gotta think about how much gang violence there is.
Tons.
And you gotta think about like how many people are killing themselves. Because suicide by gun, that's the number one way that people kill themselves in America. Like, and you can't blame that on the guns. Like no logical person can blame that on the guns, because someone who wants to end their life will end their life. Like that's how that works.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't need a gun.
You don't need a gun to kill yourself. There are literally a million ways to kill yourself. And I don't know, it's just, when it comes to it, the only reason why so many people can get on board with the gun control is because all of the media coverage that these mass shootings get. And it's like a fear tactic, because the people are scared because it's finally a way that guns can hurt them. It's the way that the middle class and upper class, all these people are like, wow, this is finally a way that guns can hurt me. When like in the streets of Compton, they're not worried about a mass shooting. They're worried about their rivals shooting them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like
seriously.
that's like where the real issue is. And that's not, I mean, most of the guns that are obtained in gangs are illegally.
Yeah, definitely.
So like, because like there's with our current regulations, they're not gonna let a bunch of at-risk gang members who
Sure.
have records buy guns.
Yeah, felons can't buy guns, right?
Yeah. So that's, I don't know. That's what it comes down to. That's why I think that they're looking at a very small part of the issue and trying to make it bigger than it is.
Definitely, yeah. So they're misrepresenting the actual problem,
Yeah.
which is people actually killing themselves with guns.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that high suicide rates, when the number one way of killing yourself is using a gun, it's obviously going to be linked to when there's higher suicide rates, there's higher gun violence deaths.
Yeah, I definitely see that, and it doesn't get media coverage either.
It doesn't. No one will cover that. It's hard to talk about. I think that the biggest way to reduce gun violence is to, if anything, increase funding on, like, maybe having actual counselors in schools.
Yeah, the counselors now that we have in schools are just a bunch of idiots. I hate all counselors.
They don't even know how to get you into college. Like,
Yeah, seriously. And most counselors are counselors because they couldn't become psychologists because
Yeah.
they got a 4-year degree instead of a doctorate's degree.
yeah,
And so now they
or
got
even
to
a
be
master's.
masters. Yeah, they got a master's instead of a doctorate's. Yeah, and I've never had a good counselor.
Not once.
Not once.
There's no one feels like they can go to our academic. They're called academic counselors.
Yeah.
Like, there's no one that I know feels that they can go to them with an issue.
Yeah. It's like you can't go to your counselor at school and say, my parents are having problems. I'm really sad, whatever.
They're gonna be like,
Yeah, they're not
have
going to know
anything
what to say. Seriously. Yeah, but the media acts like it's putting a whole nose, the mass shootings are putting a whole nose on the real gun violence in America. I've actually never heard that statistic, but it makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of debates in my political and historical classes over the last couple years, and I always choose gun control because it's something that interests me. So I know a lot of weird statistics, and I think it's stuff you can only find online. 'Cause
Yeah.
there are studies that are being put out by legitimate organizations they're nonpartisan, and people don't really understand that.
Yeah.
There are people that just seek out the facts, and that they find these statistics and they put them out there, but they're not clickbait, so they don't get any attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely see that. I mean, the media is trying to swing it in a way where it's like, oh, we're helping the American citizens by outlawing guns. Like
Yeah.
we are helping you guys by saying that people can't have AR-15s.
Yep.
But it sounds like to me that it's contrary to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Like the actual evidence shows that if your statistics are right, which I believe they are, that the mass shootings only account for a small percentage, and they're getting an overwhelming amount of media coverage.
Yeah.
Which is messed up. Certainly messed
'Cause,
up.
I mean, think about it. With how many mass shootings there are, there's probably less than 300 people that have died from mass shootings. Just for maybe even if you gave that number 2,000, that's not the amount of people that die all the time between police violence, which that's another subject.
Yeah.
I don't believe that police brutality is nearly as bad as people say it is.
I think so.
But that's another topic.
We can get into it.
But between firefights between officers and gang members, and then between gang members and gang members, and just suicides, you got to take that into account.
Yeah, you definitely do.
It's not even comparable to the mass shootings. It's just that you assume that there's more because you hear about it more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a real problem with just straight up gang violence in America.
Yeah.
Gangs getting guns illegally and killing each other. But yeah, man, I really see it as this problem, in America, the gun control debate, as kind of a hopeless case.
Yeah.
Because there's already so many guns out there. And if people aren't going to if they can't go to a gun show and buy them, so what? They'll get them anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, the gun show loophole was actually debunked and made illegal by Obama in 2014.
2014.
So if you look it up, there's a ton of videos of people going to gun shows and trying to buy weapons since 2014. And they go there and they say, okay, can I buy that rifle? And they say, do you have a license? And they're like, no. They're like, I can't sell you this.
Really?
But I'm not saying there wasn't a gun show loophole originally. It's just that it's been outlawed because Obama did outlaw it, which makes sense because it was something that was talked about a lot while he was president. And so he outlawed it, and he made it a lot harder for them to sell. So it's just like going to any gun store now. But people don't, like, since it was a talking point, they assume it still is because a lot of people don't know that that's actually been changed.
Yeah, I believe it.
It's crazy.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. I feel like in America, you know, in general, there's a lot of media that is not telling the actual issue. Like there are media sources that aren't credible, but are still being taken as credible.
Yeah.
And I really feel that there's been this grave misrepresentation of what's actually happening in the world.
Yeah.
And the places where you consume your news and consume, you know, your facts about things aren't credible.
Yep.
And people are getting all upset over issues that don't even exist, or issues that do exist but aren't as grave as people are making them out to be.
Yeah.
Which you know, is really crazy. Yeah, in the book Manufacturing Consent, it talks about this this chemical called Agent Orange that was used in Vietnam. You might have heard of it, Agent Orange. It was pretty.
I haven't.
It was basically this this gas that they would spray over rice fields to try and starve the Vietnamese people.
Oh, jeez.
And yeah, and so it never got covered by. Well, it did get covered, but it was covered in a way where they were saying that the Agent Orange was affecting the American citizens, or not as citizens, but the American military. And in actuality, it was really hurting the infants and kids and pregnant mothers who were consuming rice, and they would birth like these deformed children. And it's still been going on. Like, there's real repercussions for having that gas and putting it in the soil.
Was it the United States that put the gas in the
yeah,
soil?
they were the ones that used it. So, but yeah, I mean, that's just a specific case of like where the media has been, you know, been maneuvering around talking about the actual issue, but in favor of making America look good, or, you know, making the problem seem skewed in some way. But yeah, that's a really interesting perspective that you have on gun control. Like, I feel like most people now would be like, you know, well, in California at least, we hear, you know, gun control, you know, make sure we control all these AR-15s, and, you know, but that's
it's just the thing is, most of the people that have strong opinions on guns don't really know anything about guns.
Never shot a gun.
Like, they don't realize that you can actually very easily, with like a 15-minute YouTube video, take your semi-automatic assault rifle, which Democrats even say you should be able to have. They're against the fully automatic ones. But in 15 minutes, you can make your semi-automatic rifle into a fully automatic rifle. There's literally just a couple screws that are making it the difference.
Do you just unscrew them?
Yeah, it's like you unscrew these things and then you take the barrel down, and there's like a little blocker that's making it so it can only shoot one at a time. You take it out and then you put it back on, and you can now shoot it fully automatic.
Jeez, man.
I've seen some videos because I'm really interested in guns. But
yeah, well, okay, so the purpose of a gun. What's the purpose of a gun? It's to kill people, right?
Not always.
Well, to hunt.
To not even to kill people, but even intimidation if people are breaking into your home. There's a lot of different things that guns are used for. They're used for sports, recreation. They're used to kill people 100%. And it's just like, it's like, what are cars that can go faster than 65 miles an hour used for? The legal speed limit's 65 miles an hour, but there's cars that can go 180 on the road. But like, why is it legal to have that car if you're not allowed to go over 65?
Jeez, man. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we're allowed to do just because we can. And there's also the owning guns is like also ensures that we prevent tyranny and that the government won't be able to just control us like they do in China.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of an outdated argument, though.
I know people say it's an outdated argument, but I mean, historically, socialism and communism, what follows that is
oppression of the
people. Thank you. And I mean, we're seeing socialism and communist ideas, like very Marxist ideas, come into our country right now, and things can change. It might be outdated as of right now. Like, we don't think our government's going to take us over right now, but if we get rid of all of our guns, there's no telling that in the future we won't be back in a scenario where the people could be oppressed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly possible that the government just assumes total control over its citizens.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem likely like right now, but I mean, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, but if we get rid of guns and then it starts happening, then the government control if we get guns, and then
Yeah, what do we
game
say?
over.
Yeah, it's game over.
It's game over.
Yeah, what do you do? All right, so let's move on to the police, right? Because you mentioned it earlier.
The police.
You mentioned it earlier. Let's move on to that topic. Because I feel like in America, there's this idea that the police are out to get you.
Yes.
And, you know, I've never, well, I shouldn't say never, but every time that I'm driving, right, and I see a police car, I tense up.
Yeah, me too.
I tense up. I go 10 and 2. I look where my phone is. Okay, it's not in my lap. It's not, near me or whatever.
Exactly.
I tense up, and I feel like there's kind of a fear between the American citizens and the police. And, you could argue whether or not it's a healthy fear or not, but I'm still afraid of police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the black community as well is also afraid of police officers.
Yeah.
So, what I'm getting at is, do you think that what I really want to talk about is, do you think black people are disproportionately targeted by police?
Yeah, so that's definitely a gray area and very controversial for white people to weigh in on, for sure.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's definitely tough.
But purely based off reason.
Yeah, purely based off of reason. I will say that historically they are targeted. They are targeted because statistically they are responsible for more crime. And that's not me trying to be a bigot. I don't have anything against African Americans. I understand that the vast majority are incredible people, but it's just purely based off statistics. There are more African Americans committing crimes than other people, and the job of law enforcement is to profile people. If you want to call me a racist for saying that, you can, but you have to call statistics racist too. Which, yeah, I mean, that's also why I feel like as a white person, I can't pretend to go into the minds of an African American and say, hey, this is like stop worrying about it. Cause it's not my place. Cause I've never known what it's like to be an African American.
Yeah. Like America. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, there's no way for me to judge that.
And I feel, okay, so let me put this to you real quick. I kind of feel that, talking about police brutality as a person who's white,
mm-hmm.
right? Well, I'm not necessarily white, I'm Italian, but they're white,
Yeah.
Italians are white. It's not, I feel like there's this idea that if you're not black, you shouldn't talk about the issue.
Yeah.
Because you're not affected by it. But if that's the case, then should it just be left up to, black African American?
That's completely fair. The only reason why I say that, because obviously I have opinions. It's just that it's kind of scary to voice them because
you get labeled.
You get labeled a bigot if you do. And it's I don't know, it's definitely worrisome. You definitely don't want to get labeled as a bigot for saying something that people don't believe you have a right.
People are so quick to call people bigots and racists,
I know.
They're just so quick, because it's easy. If you're a bigot or a racist, I don't have to argue with you. I don't have to consider your position because you're a racist, you're a bigot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've heard more African Americans talk about killing police officers than I have police officers talk about killing African Americans.
Yeah.
And you see it. You see, I don't know if you know what Homeboy Industries is.
No,
it's
What's that?
This guy, I forget what his name is, but I've met him. He used to be a gang member and he got out, and he's a pastor or a priest, I believe now. He started this thing called Homeboy Industries, where it's basically a chain of restaurants, and he hires people off the streets and he pays them good money and basically ministers to them and helps them accelerate themselves in life and get out of the streets. But I've talked to him and all the people he works for, because like my family does a lot of charity work, and when like meeting with them, they were talking about like multiple people would talk about how they would like climb up light posts and wait for police to drive by and shoot them for no reason. And like stuff like that isn't talked about because it's not a heart-wrenching thing.
No, but a black person who, you know, there's a bad cop, bad egg, who comes and beats him up, that gets talked about.
Yeah, and
because you know, there's emotions involved. And, you know, it's a very, you know, it's an issue where people can jump on the bandwagon.
exactly.
So, okay, so do you think it's kind of been misrepresented?
I do. And the thing is the average payout of cases of actual police brutality is millions of dollars. They get sued and they pay out millions of dollars. So the police department doesn't realistically wouldn't believe it's worth it as an organization to kill someone who's African American and then have to pay all that money.
Definitely.
But of cases where like you can't call it police brutality if someone reaches for your gun and you beat the crap out of them. Like that, you can't call that brutality because, or if someone aims a gun at you, even if it's fake, you don't know that. Because you got to understand in a like combat perspective, because you always have to have that combat mentality when you are someone carrying a gun and when you're someone who's around people who might also have a gun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you lose your life. So if you're an officer, regardless of race, regardless, and someone points something at you, you are going to shoot them because you believe that why would someone point something at me if not, why would someone point something that looks like a gun at me for no reason unless they were trying to shoot me? So you are weighing your life in the balance and you're like, I have to subdue them or maybe even shoot them in order to save my own life. And then if they find out later it was a BB gun and you're like, okay, but how are they supposed to know that?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see that. I mean, I think that in America, there's this idea that that the police are going around seeing black kids walk in the street and pulling them into a police car and taking them to jail.
Yeah.
And that, I don't believe that's really happening. It may happen in rare cases.
Oh yeah.
But you know, what I'm really getting at is I think that police brutality exists. Like I'm certain it exists.
Yeah. Pretty much everything blank brutality pretty much exists. Like husband on wife brutality exists. Wife
Seriously.
on husband brutality exists
too. Although it's not
as common. Not as common.
It's not as common. But did you hear about Johnny Depp and his wife?
No.
Okay. This is so messed up. So Johnny Depp's wife like beat the crap out of him and like cut his finger and like really hurt him, and Johnny Depp didn't fight back. Right?
Yeah.
And then and now it's coming out that it was put as you know, Johnny Depp was kind of the perpetrator in all this. It's coming out now that he wasn't. And so, I mean, that's another big issue is like understanding that women can hit men and it hurts. And like,
Yeah.
you know, just because we don't defend ourselves, like it doesn't mean that it's not domestic violence against a woman.
Yeah.
Right? Or domestic violence against a man perpetrated
By a woman.
By a woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of going off on a tangent. Yeah, I feel like police brutality, it exists. And, you know, like you mentioned earlier, brutality exists in many different domains. The difference between those different brutality is with police, it almost seems like it can be justified, right? Because I'm a police officer and I'm always on defense and I need to make sure that my life is taken care of, and
Yeah.
I need to be that steward of my own life, right? But how do we prevent more police brutality from actually coming up? Is it? I feel like it's almost a psychological problem.
Yeah.
That the reason why there's police brutality is because there are crimes in America that are there are cycles of crimes in America where these police officers need to somewhat take action against these poor areas, and in the process of being in those poor areas, those people who live in that cycle of violence, they're somewhat inclined to hate police officers, and so the I'm kind of making a really roundabout argument here,
Yeah.
but I think the police brutality, if we're going to limit police brutality, we first need to change the poor areas mentality, the culture of the poor areas mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask you a question. Do you think that without the police that there would be more gang violence?
No, I think we need more police officers in certain areas.
No,
to
I know.
reduce gang
But
violence.
like this is kind of not a separate topic, but like a separate point. Do you believe that like with no police intervention that there would be more black on black violence? Because like they don't run the fear of the police coming and stopping them. So like, if you want to shoot someone, there would be no repercussions.
I think that, yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, and so people who hate police, if they get rid of them, there would be more black people being killed. Because there is far more, the leading killer of African Americans is the African American. They are killing each other far more than any police are killing them. But since if a white police officer does it, you can label it racism or bigotry. It's a bigger deal for some reason.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, whether it's racist or not that the police does that, like, I feel like the racist thing is making a bigger deal out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if it is an act of racism, if that's a hate crime that you're doing on someone, that is obviously something that needs to be handled, and that's a terrible thing.
Definitely. Yeah, and I feel like this topic is kind of, is taboo, to talk about, because once you admit that the biggest killer of the African Americans is the African Americans, you ultimately are labeled, racist, because you shouldn't be able to talk about that since you're white.
Yeah, it's just another statistic, though.
It's just another statistic.
If I were to say something like legitimately opinionated in a racist manner, that's a different story. But if you're literally saying something that is fact, you shouldn't be labeled a bigot because of that.
Yeah, but people just don't want to address the people who are people. The
media and
they just don't want to address the fact that
the calling people bigots community.
yeah, the far left community, we'll say.
Yeah,
because that's really who they are. I feel like these topics are somewhat frowned upon, and like you shouldn't don't talk about that because if you talk about it you get labeled a racist. I mean, it really seems like to me that we have a crisis of meaning, right? And the reason why these communities are really violent is because people don't have meaning. They don't have work. They are around people that are bad people, and so it kind of stimulates this idea that festers, which is, we hate the police, and that my life is so tough, and that I can never get out of this community. And I'm sure the odds are stacked against you, but you can try and adapt a different mentality that'll help you.
Yeah.
And it's really this culture of I can't do anything that's really stimulating all this violence.
Yeah, and I mean,
do you think I'm right about that? Or?
I do. I think that really came from Obama. Like, I think Obama was able to really allowed victimization. And I think whether you are a victim or not, victimizing yourself can do nothing but hold you down. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of the reality of a situation, you need to push forward and you need to find a way to try and solve it from your end instead of putting the blame on someone else.
Yeah, because when you put the blame on someone else, it leaves nothing into your own control. Like, I don't have control of this situation because I'm oppressed.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you're oppressed. Like, I'm sure you have the odds stacked against you. But if you even admit that you have the odds stacked against you, then you cede the power of your ability to change something to another person. It's what a person called Jocko Willink, I think that's his name, He was a Navy SEAL. He said he wrote a book called Extreme Ownership, which is this doctrine, well, not really doctrine, but this idea that instead of claiming that you're a victim and that you have the odds stacked against you, look to yourself and say that I have these problems that I can fix, which is a much more logical step. Because if you claim that I have these problems that I can fix, then it gives you power to fix your own problems.
Exactly.
So yeah, and this whole, victimhood narrative of, I'm victimized by this, I'm victimized by that. Yes, I believe you are, but don't admit it, because if you admit it, then you lose.
Well, yeah, and it's even not admitting it, just like using it as a justification for other things that you do, and that's what really fuels racism. It's if you use your own misfortunes as an excuse to do other things to cause other people misfortune, it's just a big domino effect of misfortunes, and it doesn't stop anywhere.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I don't know this. I think it really stems from this mental health problem in America. People just don't have a sense of meaning. And this isn't the top of the glacier stuff. This is like the bottom of the glacier. This is my level of analysis of this whole, mental health problem that we have in America, is that people don't have meaning in their life.
Yep.
They don't have something to cling to. And I really think it stems from being irreligious against religion. Because religion really gives you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose.
Yep.
My goal in this life is to get to heaven. Okay, now I can do all the logical steps, which are, helping the poor, giving to others, treating others the way I want to be treated. That gives you a sense of meaning. Like, I'm working towards that. That's really what gives people purpose. And if people don't find purpose in communities where people don't have purpose, because you're just in this cycle of non-purpose where no one has purpose. And so I guess I won't have purpose as well. I think if we're going to really make society better, we need to find a way to give people meaning, give people something to strive for and something to stay against. We could say on a metaphysical level that there's two things people are striving. There's one thing people are striving for, and there's an alternative that is the opposite of what people are striving for. Some sort of heaven and some sort of hell. On a metaphysical level, I'm not talking about actual heaven and hell. Well, we could say the heaven in your life is the goals that you want to pursue. I want to be a professor. That's a heaven. I don't want to be a drug addict who's addicted to meth. That's a hell. Yeah. Right? And so when you have those two goals in mind, then you know which one to focus on, the heaven, and so you can look to that to find your purpose. That's my ideal life. All that my life is right now is working towards that ideal life.
Yep.
Right? And some people have terrible ideal lives. Like, I want to be on a beach drinking margaritas. That's not an ideal. That's not a purpose. You get what I'm saying? Like, how many margaritas can you drink before you're drunk, and then you're just a drunk guy on a beach? You know what I mean? Like, that's not a really good purpose. I'm talking about, I want to have a family. I want to have a stable job. I want to have, whatever amount of kids. I want to get to heaven. Like, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I think the mental health crisis in America is from people who don't have a purpose. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
So, people, I think if we're going to really improve the lives of our citizens, I think the best thing you can do is teach them ways to have purpose. Did you ever hear about Jordan Peterson?
Yep.
Yeah.
Psychologist
guy. Yeah. I think one of the reasons why he was so successful in selling books and, and doing what he was doing is because he was teaching people about they have a sense of purpose in life and that they can choose that purpose.
Yeah.
And so that's why he was so successful. But, I don't know. It really seems like if we're going to address, the big problems in America, I think a logical step to take is to improve the lives of its citizens by giving them a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that. And yeah, I think maybe something that helps that, I don't know, but in Israel, everyone's required to serve in the military for 2 years. Once they turn 18. So I don't know. I think that gives them a sense of purpose. I've said if all else fails in America, I'll go serve in the Israeli army because I think that's the coolest thing ever. But
dude, the Israeli army is pretty cool.
They've
been like the center of fighting for like a long time. They're surrounded by, big military forces.
Yeah, and
They're
they
still
hang in
holding
there.
strong, man.
They're holding strong. They're very competent and also very respectful. Like, I believe it's Islamic mosques where you're not allowed to have animals in there. So usually in the Israeli army or in most places, you have bomb-sniffing dogs that go in and find booby traps, basically. And that's what the Israeli army uses to clear buildings before they go in. But they knew that it is against the Islamic religion to have animals be in their mosque. So they went and searched it themselves. Like, that's the type of respect and dignity that, like, you can only have if your life has a purpose.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that I feel like that is something that could aid or help the problem.
Yeah. Well, I definitely see that. I mean, people need that. People need a sense of purpose in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're just directionless. They don't know which way is up, down, or left, or right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we hit all the issues. I think we talked for a good amount of time.
Yeah.
And Matthew, it's been really nice having you on, man. I'd love to have you on another time.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Well, okay. Thank you for listening to the Outlet Podcast. If you like this episode, give us a subscribe and a like, and please write a comment. If you have something to say about gun control, you got something to say about whatever,
Let us know.
Please let us know. I love to hear your comments. All right. Thank you all for listening.